The moment I saw the notification on my phone, card frozen per your request, effective immediately, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it into the kitchen sink. $400,000. That's what my mother-in-law had demanded at dinner, sitting across from me with that thin smile of hers, like she was asking me to pass the salt. $400,000 in savings that I'd built over 11 years of 60-hour weeks, missed vacations, and saying no to every impulse that crossed my mind. And my husband, my own husband, just sat there, didn't say a word, didn't blink. I remember standing in the bank parking lot that evening, engine still running, staring at the confirmation screen. The fluorescent lights of the Chase branch behind me had already gone dark. I'd made it inside with 7 minutes to spare before closing. The teller, a young woman named Priya, must have seen something in my face because she processed everything without a single unnecessary question. She just said, "You're all set, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And I wanted to laugh. Or cry, or both, because that night when I got home, my mother-in-law was sitting in my living room, in my house, on my couch. And what she did next made me realize that freezing the card was only the beginning. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this started, back to when I still believed my marriage was solid, my family was normal, and $400,000 was just a number on a screen that meant security. 3 years ago, life was good. Not perfect Instagram good, but real good. The kind of good where you wake up on a Saturday morning and your husband is already making pancakes, and the dog is doing that stupid circle thing on the kitchen floor, and sunlight is pouring through the windows of a house you actually own. My name is Ashley. I was 34, married to Michael for 6 years, and we lived in a 3-bedroom colonial in Westfield, New Jersey, about 40 minutes outside Manhattan on a good traffic day, which in Jersey means roughly never. We'd bought the house in 2019, right before prices went completely insane, and I remember the day we got the keys. Michael lifted me over the threshold like we were newlyweds all over again, even though we'd already been married for 2 years at that point. I laughed so hard I snorted, and he said, "That sound. That's why I married you." God, I loved him. I worked as a senior financial analyst at a consulting firm in Morristown. Numbers were my thing. They'd always been my thing. While other kids were trading Pokemon cards, I was calculating the return on investment of my lemonade stand. My dad, a retired accountant from Ohio, used to say, "Ashley, you've got a calculator where your heart should be." He meant it as a compliment, I think. The $400,000 didn't appear overnight. It started when I was 23, fresh out of Rutgers, making $52,000 a year and living in a studio apartment in Hoboken that was roughly the size of a parking space. I put away 15% of every paycheck, then 20, then 25 when I got my first raise. I maxed out my 401k every single year. I drove a Honda Civic until it had 187,000 miles on it. I brought lunch to work in a container that my coworkers mocked relentlessly. Ashley's sad desk lunch, they called it. I didn't care. Every dollar had a purpose. By the time I married Michael, I had $280,000 in savings and investments. By 3 years ago, it had grown to just over $400,000. That money was my safety net, my retirement bridge, my if everything goes wrong fund. Michael knew about it. He'd always known. And he respected it, or so I thought. Michael worked in sales for a medical device company. He was good at it, too. Charismatic, warm, the kind of guy who remembered your kid's name and your dog's birthday. He made decent money, around $95,000 with commissions, but he wasn't a saver, not like me. His philosophy was, money comes and goes. Mine was, money goes if you don't watch it. We balanced each other out. At least, that's the story I told myself. Our arrangement was simple. Joint account for mortgage, utilities, groceries, and shared expenses. We each contributed proportionally based on income. Everything else, personal savings, investments, discretionary spending, stayed separate. It was clean. It was fair. And it worked. for 6 years without a single argument. Then there was Karen. Karen Mitchell, my mother-in-law. 61 years old, retired school administrator from Scotch Plains, divorced from Michael's father since Michael was 14. She was one of those women who could walk into a room and make every person in it feel slightly inadequate. Perfect posture, perfect highlights, perfect opinions about everything from how I loaded the dishwasher to how I seasoned the chicken. For the first few years of our marriage, Karen was manageable. She'd visit once a month, make a few pointed comments about the house being cozy, which I knew meant small, and then leave. I'd vent to my best friend Megan over wine, we'd laugh about it, and life would go on. But something shifted about 18 months before everything blew up. Karen's second husband, a man named Doug, who I'd actually liked quite a bit, passed away from a heart attack. It was sudden. He was 63, played tennis 3 times a week, looked healthy as a horse. Then, one Tuesday morning, he was gone. I felt genuinely sorry for Karen. I did. Losing a spouse is devastating, and despite our differences, I wanted to support her. Michael and I drove to her house that same night. I made her a casserole. I helped her with the funeral arrangements. I sat with her while she cried. What I didn't know then was that Doug's finances were a disaster. He'd been living well beyond his means. Leased cars, country club memberships, a timeshare in Hilton Head that was hemorrhaging money. When the estate was settled, Karen was left with the house, a modest pension, Social Security, and about $40,000 in savings. For a woman accustomed to a certain lifestyle, it was a reckoning. And that's when her visits became more frequent. First it was twice a month, then every weekend. Then she started showing up on Wednesdays, just to see Michael. She'd stay for dinner. She'd comment on what I was cooking. She'd rearrange things in my kitchen and say she was helping. She'd ask Michael about our finances in front of me with this casual tone, like she was asking about the weather. "So, are you two putting enough away for retirement?" "Michael, honey, have you looked into refinancing? Rates are good right now." "Ashley, do you really need that gym membership? Those things add up." I bit my tongue every single time because Michael adored his mother and I loved Michael, and that's what you do. You absorb the small cuts because the big picture is worth it. Or so I thought. The first real warning sign came on a Sunday afternoon in October. The air had that crisp autumn bite. Leaves were turning gold and red along our street, and I was in the kitchen making apple cider from scratch, one of my favorite fall rituals. Michael was in the living room watching football with Karen, who had arrived unannounced for the 3rd time that week. I heard them talking. Not arguing, just talking. But something about Michael's tone made me pause. He sounded careful, guarded, the way people sound when they're discussing something they don't want overheard. I turned off the stove and moved closer to the doorway. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. At least, that's what I told myself. "She's always been like that with money," Karen was saying. "Tight. Controlling." "Mom, she's not controlling. She's careful. There's a difference." Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, my son is living in a house with a woman who has nearly $500,000 tucked away and won't even, "Mom, stop." A pause. I could hear the football announcers filling the silence. "I'm just saying, Michael, when your father and I were married, what was mine was his, and what was his was mine. That's how marriage works. This separate accounts business," she made a sound, a little click of her tongue, disapproving, dismissive. "It's not normal." My stomach tightened. I stood there in the doorway holding a wooden spoon, cider forgotten. Michael hadn't told his mother the exact amount in my savings account. I was almost sure of that. We'd agreed early on that our personal finances were between us. So how did Karen know it was nearly $500,000? I walked back to the stove, turned the burner on again, stirred the cider. My hands were steady, but something inside me had shifted, like a picture frame that's been bumped just slightly off-center. You might not notice it right away, but once you do, you can't unsee it. That night, after Karen left, I sat on the edge of our bed and watched Michael brush his teeth through the open bathroom door. "Your mom seems to know a lot about our finances," I said. Casual. Light. He spit into the sink. "What do you mean?" "She mentioned my savings today. Gave a pretty specific number." Michael paused, toothbrush hovering. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for just a second, maybe half a second, I saw something flash across his face. Guilt? Fear? I couldn't tell. It was gone before I could name it. "She's just guessing, Ash. You know how she is. She makes assumptions." Pretty accurate assumption. He rinsed his mouth, wiped his face with a towel, and walked over to me. He sat down, put his arm around my shoulders, and kissed my temple. "Don't worry about my mom. She's still adjusting after Doug. She's projecting, that's all." I wanted to believe him. I really did. And that night, lying in the dark with his arm draped over me, listening to his breathing slow into sleep, I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Almost. Because there was one detail I couldn't shake. When Karen had said nearly $500,000, Michael hadn't corrected her. He hadn't said, "Mom, you don't know what you're talking about." He hadn't laughed it off or changed the subject. He'd just said, "Mom, stop." Not, "That's wrong." Not, "That's none of your business." Just stop. As in, stop saying it out loud. As in, stop saying it where she might hear you. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in 6 years of marriage, I wondered what else my husband had told his mother that he hadn't told me. The cider sat on the stove all night. By morning, it had gone cold. The weeks that followed that Sunday were like watching a crack spread across a windshield. Slow, silent, inevitable. You know it's happening. You can trace its path with your finger, but you keep driving anyway because pulling over means admitting the whole thing is shattered. I told myself I was overreacting. Karen was grieving. Michael was caught in the middle. The comment about my savings was just a lucky guess. Or maybe Michael had mentioned a ballpark figure in passing, innocently, the way spouses sometimes do. I could live with that. I could forgive that. What I couldn't forgive was what came next. It started with Thanksgiving. Every year, Michael and I hosted. It was our thing. I'd spend 3 days cooking, brined turkey, homemade cranberry sauce, sweet potato casserole with the little marshmallows on top, because Michael was secretly a 5-year-old when it came to Thanksgiving sides. We'd invite my parents from Ohio, Michael's brother Brandon and his wife Jennifer from Connecticut, and of course, Karen. It was always a full table, always warm, always good. This year, Karen called Michael 2 weeks before Thanksgiving and told him she wanted to host instead, at her house in Scotch Plains. "It would mean so much to me," she said. "First Thanksgiving without Doug. I need to be in my own home, surrounded by family." Michael came to me with puppy dog eyes. "Ash, she's hurting. Can we just do this 1 year at her place?" I said yes. Of course I said yes, because I'm not a monster, and the woman had lost her husband, and it was one Thanksgiving. What was the big deal? The big deal revealed itself the moment we walked through Karen's front door. She'd redecorated. New curtains in the dining room, heavy, cream-colored, expensive-looking. A new centerpiece on the table that I recognized from Pottery Barn's holiday collection. New chair cushions. A new set of wine glasses that caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the tablecloth. "Karen, your place looks beautiful," I said, because it did, and because I was trying. She smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart. I figured if I'm going to be alone in this house, I might as well make it feel like home again." Something about the way she said alone, with this performative little catch in her voice, made my teeth clench. But I let it go. I set down the pie I'd brought, hung up my coat, and poured myself a glass of wine. Dinner was fine. My parents were their usual lovely selves. Brandon and Jennifer brought their 2 kids, who immediately disappeared into the basement to play on their tablets. The turkey was dry. Karen had overcooked it by at least 30 minutes, but nobody said a word. We talked about football, about the kids' school, about my dad's knee replacement that was scheduled for January. Then, somewhere between the main course and dessert, Karen steered the conversation. "You know," she said, setting down her fork with exaggerated care, "I've been thinking a lot about the future lately, about security, about what it means to really take care of family." My mother, Linda, nodded sympathetically. "That's natural, Karen. After a loss like yours, it takes time to feel stable again." "Exactly." Karen looked at my mother with an expression of deep gratitude, as if Linda had just handed her a lifeline. Then she turned to Michael. "That's actually something I wanted to discuss with everyone here." I felt it before it happened, that prickling sensation at the back of my neck, like the air before a thunderstorm. "Michael and I have been talking," Karen continued, "and I think it makes sense for me to move in with you two, temporarily, just until I get back on my feet." The table went quiet. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I looked at Michael. He was staring at his plate. "Michael and you have been talking," I repeated. Not a question, a statement, flat as a board. "It just came up last week," Michael said quickly, still not meeting my eyes. "I was going to mention it to you, but you decided Thanksgiving dinner in front of both families was a better venue?" "Ashley," Karen's voice was gentle, concerned, the voice of a reasonable woman dealing with an unreasonable daughter-in-law. "No one is ambushing you. I just thought, with everyone here, we could have an open conversation about it." My father cleared his throat. My mother put her hand on his arm, their silent signal for "let it play out." "Karen," I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice was, "I wish Michael had talked to me about this privately first, but I hear you. Let's discuss it, privately, after the holiday." "Of course," Karen said, smiling. "Of course, sweetheart." She called me sweetheart the way some people call a waitress hun, with a thin coating of warmth over something cold. The rest of Thanksgiving was a performance. We all smiled. We ate pie. Brandon made a joke about the Cowboys losing that nobody laughed at. When we left, I hugged Karen at the door and said, "Happy Thanksgiving." She held me a beat too long and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for understanding, Ashley." I didn't say a word the entire drive home. Michael tried twice to start a conversation. The first time he said, "That went okay, right?" I didn't respond. The second time he said, "Ash, come on, talk to me." I turned up the radio. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom, closed the door, and called Megan. "She wants to move in," I said. "Absolutely not," Megan said. No hesitation, no qualifiers. That's why she was my best friend. Michael already agreed, without asking me. Then Michael needs to unagree. "Megan, what am I supposed to do? She's his mother. She's a widow. If I say no, I'm the villain." "You're already the villain, Ash. You've been the villain since you married her son and had the audacity to be competent with money. The question isn't whether she'll make you the bad guy. She will regardless. The question is whether you're going to let her move into your house and make your life hell from the inside." She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and doing something about it are two very different things. The next morning, I sat Michael down at the kitchen table. No distractions, no TV, no phone. "Your mother is not moving in," I said. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. "Ash, she's struggling. The house is too big for her. She's lonely. She's burning through her savings. Then she should sell the house, downsize, get an apartment. She doesn't want to sell. That's her home. She and Doug—" "Michael," I leaned forward. "She ambushed me at Thanksgiving, in front of my parents, in front of your brother. She planned that. You helped her plan it." "I didn't plan anything. She asked if she could bring it up, and I said, 'You said yes, without talking to me first. That's the problem.'" He went quiet. The coffee maker gurgled behind us. Outside, our neighbor's dog was barking at nothing, the way it always did on Saturday mornings. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I should have told you first. But Ash, she's my mom. I can't just abandon her." "Nobody is asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to set a boundary. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll tell her it's not the right time. Thank you." He reached across the table and took my hand, squeezed it. "We're good?" "We're good," I said. And for about 3 weeks, we were. Karen didn't mention moving in again. She called Michael at her usual frequency. She even sent me a text, "Saw this recipe and thought of you," with a link to a sweet potato soup that was actually pretty good. I made it. I even sent her a photo. She replied with a heart emoji. "See?" I told myself. "It's fine. We just needed to communicate better." I was a fool. It was a Tuesday evening in mid-December when I came home from work and found Karen sitting at my kitchen table. Not in the living room, in the kitchen. My kitchen, with a folder open in front of her and Michael sitting across from her, looking like a man who'd been caught shoplifting. "What's going on?" I said, setting my bag down slowly. "Ashley, come sit," Karen said. Not a request, an instruction. I didn't sit. I stood in the doorway, coat still on, keys still in my hand. "Michael?" He wouldn't look at me. His jaw was working, that thing he did when he was stressed, grinding his teeth without realizing it. "Ashley," Karen said again, "I've been doing some research about your financial situation." "My financial situation," I repeated. "Yours and Michael's, as a married couple." She tapped the folder. "I spoke with a financial advisor, a friend of Doug's actually, very reputable, and he explained to me that in New Jersey, marital assets are subject to equitable distribution. Meaning that, even though you keep separate accounts, in the eyes of the law, what you've accumulated during the marriage could be considered joint property." My blood turned to ice. Not because she was wrong. She wasn't entirely wrong, technically, though the reality was far more nuanced than she was making it sound, but because she had gone out of her way to research the legal framework around my money. My savings. The money I'd been building since I was 23 years old. "Karen," I said, "why are you researching the legal status of my savings?" She folded her hands on the table, that thin smile again. "Because I think it's time we had an honest conversation about family responsibility. I'm 61 years old. I'm alone. My savings are dwindling, and my son, my only source of real family, is married to a woman sitting on $400,000 while his mother struggles." There it was, the number. Specific, exact. Not nearly $500,000 this time. 400,000. She knew. And the only person who could have told her was sitting across from her, still staring at the table like a child in the principal's office. "Michael," my voice came out sharp enough to cut glass, "did you tell your mother the exact amount in my savings account?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. "He didn't have to tell me," Karen said smoothly. "I'm not stupid, Ashley. I can do math. Your salary, your lifestyle, your spending habits, or lack thereof. It wasn't hard to estimate. I'm not talking to you, Karen. I'm talking to my husband." Michael finally looked up. His eyes were red, not crying, just exhausted, worn down. The eyes of a man who'd been pulled in 2 directions for months and had finally stopped resisting the stronger current. "I told her," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Ash. She kept asking and I—" "You told her," I nodded. Slow, mechanical. "What else did you tell her?" "Ashley, this isn't an interrogation," Karen snapped, and for the first time, the mask slipped. Just for a second. Underneath the concerned mother act, underneath the sweet voice and the folder and the legal research, there was something hard and calculating and hungry. I saw it, and she saw me see it. The room shifted. Something fundamental rearranged itself between the 3 of us, like tectonic plates grinding past each other deep underground. No earthquake yet, but the pressure was building. I looked at the folder on my kitchen table. I looked at my husband, who had betrayed my trust and couldn't even hold my gaze. I looked at my mother-in-law, who had walked into my house with a legal strategy to claim my life's savings. And I made a decision. "You're right, Karen," I said. My voice was calm, almost pleasant. "Let's have that honest conversation. But not tonight. I need time to think." Karen's eyes narrowed, just slightly. She'd expected a fight. She'd prepared for a fight. My calm unsettled her. "Of course," she said. "Take all the time you need." I smiled at her. Then I turned, walked upstairs, and locked the bedroom door behind me. I sat on the bed in the dark for 20 minutes, listening to Karen's car start and pull away, listening to Michael's footsteps pace the kitchen below me. My phone was in my hand. My banking app was open. And I was doing math. The kind of math that doesn't involve numbers. The kind where you calculate how much of your life you're willing to lose. The next morning, Michael left for work at 7:30. I called in sick. And at 9 o'clock, I was sitting in the parking lot of the Chase branch on North Avenue, waiting for it to open, with a list of questions I never thought I'd need to ask. But when I walked inside and sat down with the branch manager, a calm, gray-haired man named Robert, the first thing he said stopped me cold. "Mrs. Torres, I'm glad you came in. We actually flagged some unusual activity on your account yesterday. Were you aware that someone attempted to add an authorized user?" The room tilted. Not literally. The floor stayed level, the fluorescent lights stayed steady, Robert's desk stayed exactly where it was. But something inside me lurched sideways, like the moment a roller coaster crests the hill and your stomach hasn't caught up yet. "Someone attempted to add an authorized user?" I repeated. Each word came out slow, deliberate, as if I were translating from a foreign language. Robert adjusted his glasses and turned his monitor slightly so I could see it. Yesterday afternoon, at approximately 2:47 p.m., a request was submitted online through the account portal to add a secondary authorized user to your individual savings account. The name submitted was Karen Mitchell. I stopped breathing. I'm not being dramatic. I literally forgot to inhale for what felt like 10 seconds. Robert must have noticed because he said, "Mrs. Torres, can I get you some water?" "Who submitted the request?" My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone far away. "It was initiated through your online banking credentials, your login, your password. However, our system flagged it because the IP address didn't match your usual activity patterns, and the device used was not one previously associated with your account. That's why it was held for review rather than processed automatically." My login. My password. I thought of my laptop sitting on the kitchen counter. I thought of the sticky note inside my planner, the one where I'd written my banking password because I kept forgetting it after the last mandatory reset. The planner that lived in the drawer of my nightstand, in the bedroom, in my house, where Karen had been sitting just 12 hours ago with a folder full of legal research and my husband's guilty face. "It wasn't me," I said. "I did not submit that request." Robert nodded. "That's what I suspected, which is why I'm glad you're here. We can file a formal dispute, flag the attempt as unauthorized, and I'd strongly recommend changing all your credentials today. I'd also recommend freeze everything." He paused. "Everything?" "The savings account, the checking account linked to it, every card associated with my name on any individual account. Freeze it all, today, right now." Robert studied me for a moment. He'd been in banking long enough to recognize what was sitting across from him. Not a paranoid customer, not a confused one, but a woman who had just realized that the threat was inside the house. "I can do that," he said. "Let's go through each account." It took 45 minutes. We changed every password, every security question, every PIN. We added two-factor authentication to everything. We froze the savings account entirely. No withdrawals, no transfers, no modifications without my physical presence and government-issued ID. Robert printed confirmation pages for everything. I folded them into my purse with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. When it was done, Robert walked me to the door. He shook my hand and said, "Mrs. Torres, if you believe someone accessed your credentials without authorization, that's a criminal matter. You have every right to file a police report." "Thank you, Robert." I managed to smile. It felt like lifting concrete. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. I called Megan. She picked up on the first ring. "She tried to add herself to my account," I said. No preamble, no greeting. "What?" "Karen. She used my login. She must have found my password and tried to add herself as an authorized user on my savings account. Yesterday, while she was in my house with that folder." The silence on Megan's end lasted 3 full seconds. Then, "Ashley, you need a lawyer. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today." "I know." "I'm sending you a name. Rachel Whitfield. She's a family law attorney in Summit. She handled my cousin's divorce, the ugly one with the lake house. She's a shark. Call her." I called. Rachel Whitfield had a cancellation at 2:30. I took it. Her office was on the second floor of a brick building on Springfield Avenue, above a bakery that made the whole stairwell smell like cinnamon rolls. It felt obscene that something could smell so good on a day when my life was coming apart at the seams. Rachel was in her late 40s, sharp-featured, with dark hair pulled back in a clip and reading glasses perched on her nose. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she took off her glasses and set them on her desk. "First question, the savings. Was any of it accumulated before the marriage?" "About $280,000 was mine before the wedding. The rest grew during the marriage through my contributions and investment returns." "Do you have documentation, statements showing the premarital balance?" "I have statements going back to 2013, every single one." Rachel almost smiled. "Of course you do. You're a financial analyst." She leaned back. "Here's the good news. In New Jersey, premarital assets are generally considered separate property, not subject to equitable distribution. The growth during the marriage gets murkier. It depends on whether it was passive appreciation or active contributions. But you've got a strong foundation. And the bad news? The bad news is that your mother-in-law attempted to access your financial account without authorization. That's potentially identity theft. And the fact that your husband likely facilitated it by sharing your personal information, possibly even providing access to your credentials, that changes the landscape of your marriage significantly. I stared at the framed law degree on her wall. Seton Hall, class of 2003. "I don't want a divorce," I said. The words came out before I could stop them, and they surprised me, even after everything. Rachel's expression didn't change. "You don't have to decide that today, but I'd recommend separating your finances completely and immediately. Move any remaining accessible funds into a new account at a different institution, one your husband doesn't know about." "And Ashley?" She waited until I met her eyes. "Change the locks on your house if your mother-in-law has a key." "She doesn't have a key." "Are you sure?" I opened my mouth, closed it. Was I sure? Michael could have given her one. Michael could have given her a lot of things I didn't know about. "I'll change them," I said. I drove home in a daze. It was 4:15. Michael wouldn't be home until 6:30. I had 2 hours. I used every minute. I called a locksmith, a guy named Dave from a local company who showed up in 30 minutes and didn't ask questions. New deadbolt on the front door, new lock on the back. $340. I paid cash. I went through the house room by room. My planner, the one with the password sticky note, was in the nightstand drawer, exactly where I'd left it. But the sticky note was gone. I searched the drawer, the floor, under the bed. Gone. I checked my laptop. The browser history had been cleared. Not by me. I never cleared my browser history because I never needed to. It was my personal laptop, in my house, and nobody else used it. Except someone had. I sat on the bedroom floor with my back against the bed and cried. Not the pretty kind of crying, the ugly kind. The kind where your whole face contorts and sounds come out of you that don't sound human. I cried for my marriage. I cried for the woman I'd been 3 months ago, the one who made cider and hosted Thanksgiving and believed her husband when he said, "We're good." I cried because I was 34 years old and sitting on the floor of a house that no longer felt safe. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Mom wants to come for dinner Thursday. That okay?" I stared at it until the screen went dark. That night, Michael noticed the new locks immediately. He stood at the front door, key not working, and rang the doorbell. I opened it. His face was confused, then annoyed, then, when he saw my expression, afraid. "Why did you change the locks?" he asked. "Someone accessed my bank account without my permission. Someone used my laptop and my password to try to add your mother as an authorized user on my savings." The color drained from his face. Not the reaction of a guilty man, or maybe exactly the reaction of a guilty man. I couldn't tell anymore. I couldn't tell anything anymore. Ash, I wouldn't. The sticky note with my password is gone from my planner. My browser history was wiped. Your mother was in this house yesterday with access to both. That doesn't mean... Michael, I held up my hand. I need you to answer one question, and I need the truth. Did you give your mother my banking password? No. The word came out fast, hot, defensive. God, no. Ash, I would never. Did you tell her where I keep it? This time the pause was a fraction too long, a splinter of a second, but I caught it. 11 years of watching numbers had trained me to notice fractions. Michael, he exhaled, ran his hand through his hair, looked at the ceiling. She asked me once if you kept financial stuff in the bedroom. I said you had a planner in the nightstand. That's all I said. I didn't know there was a password in it. I swear to God, Ashley. But you knew she was looking for financial information about me, and you pointed her in the right direction. I didn't think she'd... You didn't think. I stepped back from the doorway. That's the problem, Michael. You never think when it comes to her. He slept in the guest room that night. I lay in our bed, my bed, staring at the ceiling the same way I had after that Sunday with the cider. But this time, the picture frame wasn't just tilted. It was on the floor, glass shattered, and I could see the blank wall behind it. The next 3 days were the worst of my life. Michael moved through the house like a ghost, speaking to me in half sentences, sleeping in the guest room without protest. He didn't bring up Karen. He didn't bring up the account. He existed in the same space as me without actually being present. On Thursday, Karen showed up for the dinner Michael had texted about, the one I never agreed to. She arrived at 6 p.m. with a bottle of wine and a smile. She rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. Michael let her in through the garage. I stayed in the bedroom. I could hear them downstairs, Karen's voice, bright and social, asking Michael where I was. His mumbled response. Then footsteps on the stairs. A knock on the bedroom door. Ashley? Karen's voice, dripping with concern. Honey, are you feeling all right? I didn't answer. I sat on the bed with my laptop open, reviewing the new account I'd set up at a completely different bank, TD Bank, on the other side of town. Rachel Whitfield's retainer agreement was saved on my desktop. I'd signed it that morning. Karen knocked again. Ashley, I brought that wine you like, the Pinot from that vineyard we visited last summer. Come down and have a glass. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of this woman, standing outside my bedroom door with a bottle of wine, acting like she hadn't tried to steal $400,000 from me 2 days ago, acting like we were friends, acting like nothing had happened. Something broke inside me. Not the sad kind of breaking, the other kind. The kind where the thing that breaks was actually holding you back, and once it snaps, you can finally move. I opened the door. Karen stood there in a cream-colored sweater, wine bottle in hand, face arranged in an expression of maternal worry. Karen, I said calmly, I know what you did. I know you accessed my laptop. I know you tried to add yourself to my bank account. The bank flagged it. I have documentation, and I've retained an attorney. Her face didn't change, not a flicker. She held my gaze for 5 full seconds, then tilted her head and said, Ashley, I have no idea what you're talking about. Then you won't mind if I file a police report. And there, right there, I saw it again, that flash beneath the surface. Not fear exactly, something colder, recalculation, like watching someone rearrange chess pieces in their mind. She turned without another word and walked downstairs. I heard her say to Michael, Your wife just threatened me with the police. I think we need to have a very serious conversation about what's happening in this marriage. I closed the bedroom door. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months. I picked up my phone and texted Rachel Whitfield 3 words. I'm ready. Everything. Then I opened a new browser tab and began searching for apartments in Morristown, close to my office, close to my new bank, and far enough from Westfield that Karen Mitchell would need a GPS and a damn good excuse to find me. The wine sat untouched on the hallway floor all night. By morning, Karen was gone, but on the kitchen counter, tucked under the sugar bowl where she knew I'd find it, was a note in her perfect cursive handwriting. Family takes care of family, Ashley, one way or another. I found the note at 6:47 a.m., standing barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, reaching for the coffee filters. Family takes care of family, Ashley, one way or another. The handwriting was elegant, almost beautiful. The threat was not. I didn't crumble. I photographed the note, texted the image to Rachel Whitfield, and then slid it into a plastic Ziploc bag like I'd seen people do on crime shows. Evidence. That's what my life had become, a collection of evidence. Rachel called me back within the hour. Don't leave the house yet. I'm filing an emergency motion today. And Ashley, that note, combined with the unauthorized account access, gives us enough for a temporary restraining order against Karen. Do you want me to pursue it? Yes, I said without hesitation. And Michael? I looked at the guest room door, still closed. I could hear him snoring faintly through the wood. The man I'd loved for 8 years. The man who'd carried me over the threshold. The man who'd handed his mother the map to my life savings and called it helping. Start the divorce paperwork, I said. I'll sign when it's ready. The next 72 hours moved at the speed of a legal system motivated by clear evidence of financial fraud. Rachel was everything Megan had promised. Precise, relentless, and completely uninterested in Karen Mitchell's feelings. She filed the restraining order on Wednesday morning. By Thursday afternoon, it was granted. Karen Mitchell was legally prohibited from coming within 200 feet of me, my home, or any financial institution where I held accounts. I wasn't there when Karen was served, but Brandon was. Michael's brother called me that evening, the first time he'd ever called me directly, and his voice was shaking. Ashley, I need you to know that Jennifer and I had no idea what was happening. None of it. And what my mother did, he trailed off. I heard Jennifer in the background saying something I couldn't make out. Brandon, I appreciate that. She lost it when they served her. I mean, completely lost it. She called Michael screaming. She called me screaming. She said you were destroying the family, that you were selfish, that Doug would be ashamed. He stopped himself. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. Actually, I do. Was any of it recorded? Jennifer got the voicemail she left on our phone. The whole thing. 3 minutes of her calling you every name in the book. Can you save that? Already done. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Brandon. Ashley, for what it's worth, you're the best thing that ever happened to my brother, and he's too stupid to see it. I hung up before he could hear me cry. Michael and I had our final conversation on a Friday night. He'd been sleeping in the guest room for 11 days. We'd been communicating through texts about logistics, who was buying groceries, when the electric bill was due, whether the dog had been fed. A dog. God, I worried about the dog more than anything. Chester, our 5-year-old golden retriever, kept wandering between the guest room and the master bedroom like a diplomat trying to broker peace. I found Michael sitting on the back porch, beer in hand, staring at the yard. It was January now, and the grass was brown and brittle. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. She's my mother, Ash, he said before I could speak. I know what she did was wrong. I know. But she's my mother. And I was your wife. He flinched at the past tense. Was? I sat down in the chair beside him. The cold bit through my jeans immediately. Rachel filed the papers this morning. You'll be served Monday. He set the beer down. His hand was shaking. Ashley, please, we can fix this. I'll cut her off. I'll go to therapy, whatever you need. What I needed was a husband who don't give his mother the keys to my financial life. What I needed was a partner who said, that's my wife's money and it's none of your business, instead of, Mom, stop. What I needed, Michael, was for you to choose me, just once. I did choose you, every day. You chose the path of least resistance every day, and the path of least resistance ran straight through me." He started crying, real crying, the kind that makes a grown man's shoulders shake and his breath come in ragged gasps. I sat there and watched, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, grief. Pure, bottomless grief for the life we should have had. "I'm keeping the house," I said quietly. "Rachel says the premarital assets are clearly mine, and since my down payment was 70%, the equity split favors me heavily. You can have the furniture." "I don't want it. Too many memories." "And Chester?" My throat closed. "We'll figure that out." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "My mom, she's telling everyone you stole from her, that you manipulated me. She's posted on Facebook." "I know. Rachel's documenting everything. If she violates the restraining order or continues the defamation, we'll pursue legal action." I paused. "Michael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." He nodded. "The folder she brought that night, the one with the legal research about equitable distribution. Did you help her put that together?" The pause told me everything, but he answered anyway. "She asked me to print some articles from legal websites. I thought she was just trying to understand how things work. I didn't know she was building a case to take your money." "But you suspected." "Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I did." He stared at his hands. "I told myself it was harmless, that she was just anxious about her own finances and projecting. I told myself a lot of things." "I know," I said. "I told myself a lot of things too." I stood up. The porch light cast a yellow circle around us, and beyond it, the yard dissolved into darkness. Somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Normal life continuing without us. "I'm sorry, Ashley." His voice cracked on my name. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are," I said. And I meant it. He was sorry. He'd always be sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust, and sorry doesn't undo the moment I found my password missing from my planner, and sorry doesn't erase the image of his mother sitting at my kitchen table with a folder full of strategies to take what was mine. The divorce was finalized in April. Rachel Whitfield earned every cent of her fee. The premarital savings, the full $280,000, were ruled entirely separate property. The remaining $120,000 in marital growth was split, but given Karen's unauthorized access attempt, the judge was sympathetic. I walked away with $350,000 of my original $400,000. Michael got the rest, plus his own accounts, plus a monthly reminder of what happens when you let your mother run your marriage. Karen violated the restraining order once. She showed up at my office in Morristown in March, demanding to talk like adults. Security escorted her out. Rachel filed the violation. Karen spent a night in the Scotch Plains Municipal Holding Cell. I heard from Brandon that she called it the most humiliating experience of her life. Good. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Morristown, 12 minutes from work. It had hardwood floors, big windows, and a balcony where I could drink my coffee in the morning without listening for Karen's car in the driveway. Chester came with me. Michael agreed without a fight, the one decent thing he did in the entire process. Megan helped me move. My parents drove in from Ohio. My dad, bad knee and all, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, while my mom arranged the kitchen exactly the way she knew I liked it. Spices alphabetized, coffee mugs on the left, wine glasses on the right. "You're going to be okay, sweetheart," my mom said. And when she called me sweetheart, it meant something entirely different than when Karen said it. It meant, I love you. It meant, I'm proud of you. It meant, you did the hard thing, and I'm here. I rebuilt, slowly. Not a dramatic montage. Real life doesn't work that way. There were nights I ate cereal for dinner and cried watching home renovation shows. There were mornings I woke up reaching for Michael's side of the bed and finding only Chester, snoring with his legs in the air. There were moments in the grocery store when I'd see a couple arguing over which pasta sauce to buy and think, I'd give anything for a fight that small. But my savings account grew again, $360,000 by summer, $375,000 by fall. The numbers climbed the way they always had, steadily, patiently, because I showed up and did the work. That was the thing Karen never understood. The money wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was 11 years of discipline and sacrifice and saying no to every shortcut. Last month, I ran into Michael at a coffee shop in Westfield. I'd gone back to pick up a book I'd ordered from the local bookstore, and there he was, standing in line at the place we used to go every Sunday. He looked thinner, tired. He saw me and froze, and for a second, we were strangers who used to know everything about each other. Hey, Ash. Hey. You look good. Thanks. How are you? He shrugged. Mom moved in with me after the divorce. I almost laughed. Almost. How's that going? He gave me a look, the kind of look that contained an entire confession, and said, She rearranged my kitchen last week, threw out my coffee maker because it was too old. This time, I did laugh. I couldn't help it. And he laughed too, and for 1 second, we were us again. The us from the pancake mornings and the threshold carry and the snort laugh that made him fall in love with me. Then it passed. Take care of yourself, Michael, I said. You too, Ash. I walked to my car. Chester was waiting in the back seat, tail going crazy when he saw me. I drove home to my apartment, with my locks and my coffee mugs and my savings that nobody could touch, and I made myself dinner. Something good, not a sad desk lunch, a real meal at a real table in a home that was finally, completely mine. The $400,000 is back. Actually, it's $412,000 now. Every dollar accounted for, every dollar earned. And if I've learned anything from the worst year of my life, it's this. The most dangerous person in the world isn't the one who asks for your money. It's the one who convinces someone you love to hand it over for them. Lock your doors, change your passwords, trust your instincts, and never, ever apologize for protecting what you built. Because family takes care of family, but only the family that deserves it.